Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome back. We are continuing our discussion on the topic of wisdom. Last time I described wisdom from the perspective of the Quran and some Hadith. Now, when we look at wisdom, why study wisdom? In the last lecture we said that this was one of the reasons for the creation of the universe. God being the wise, the Hakim, He created all things with a wise purpose. And when we look at the definition of wisdom, we can say that it has three distinct connotations. It could mean the inner meaning of a thing. So we say, what is the hikmah of that thing? Or we can say that it is the wise purpose or the reason for its being. What is the hikmah behind this? What is the lesson to be learned in that? Or hikmah can also refer to the expression, the way in which it is expressed. So for example, the sublime truth is expressed in a beautiful way. This is called a hikmah. Like for example, Socrates says, know thyself. Beautiful, elegant. Everybody can relate to this statement, know thyself. Just two words. Now Prophet Muhammad says something similar, and he related it to divinity. He said, he who knows himself knows his Lord. These are hikam, and they express sublime truths. They express a transcendent meaning which is greater than simply the collection of their words. Okay, let's go back and look at what the philosophers defined wisdom to be. Beginning with Socrates. Socrates, like Pythagoras, believed that true philosophy was the love of wisdom. So he defined it as philo and sophia. Philo means to love and sophia means wisdom. So he saw himself as a philosopher or a lover of wisdom. It is commonly thought in Islam that hikmah is equivalent or synonymous with philosophy. But we said that philosophy is the love of wisdom, not wisdom itself. Al-Kindi was the first philosopher in the Islamic tradition who defined wisdom in similar terms. He says the virtue of the rational faculty, the knowledge of universal things in their realities, and the employment of those realities which must be employed. Now let us turn our attention to hikmah in the Islamic mystical tradition that some people call Sufism. Now, I'm hesitant to use the term Sufism because many people believe that this is a separate sect of Islam. It is not. It is simply a different understanding that looks into the esoteric principles or the asrar, the secrets, the mystical dimension of Islam. It is based on the idea that all things have an external and an internal, an outward dimension and an inward dimension. Just like the Quran, there are hadith which state that the Quran has 7 layers of inward meaning. So every time you read the Quran with a certain clarity, a certain inward awareness, a certain perspective, you reach a different depth of meaning. So the mystics were looking for the deeper meanings in life. And this is how they define hikmah. Abdurrazak Kashani, a famous Sufi lexicographer, says that hikmah is the awareness of the mysteries of things. He who has wisdom and knowledge and deed, God has made him a sage. Another great Sufi sheikh, Khaja Abdullah al-Ansari, says hikmah is the mastery of putting all things in their place. Ibn-Arabi's student, Sadruddin al-Qunawi, says, know that wisdom is more specific than knowledge. Every wise person has knowledge, but not every knowledgeable person is wise. Wisdom is higher than knowledge. I want to clarify the difference between knowledge and wisdom. And this is an important distinction in Islam because knowledge relates to the intellect and wisdom relates to the heart. And the heart is a spiritual organ which perceives. Knowledge is discursive, and wisdom is a summation, is a summary. It is the essence of knowledge. Evidence of the fact that hikmah resides in the heart is a statement from Imam Ali, who says that wisdom is a tree that grows in the heart and it bears fruit on the tongue. Or, for example, the Prophet who said, "He who makes himself sincere to God for 40 days, springs of wisdom gush forth from his heart and onto his tongue." Both Imam Ali and the Prophet, peace be upon him, refer to the heart as being the wellspring of wisdom. So there is a relationship between wisdom residing or originating in the heart, growing in the heart, but at the same time being expressed on the tongue. So it's not simply the knowledge of things in a theoretical sense or understanding, because that can be called gnosis. That's ma'rifah. Ma'rifah is the knowledge of things and knowing them on the plane of the heart. But hikmah is the actual expression of that ma'rifah on the tongue. There is an artistic, a linguistic expression of hikmah, and this is what makes it unique and important. Now, hikmah is important not only because it is beautiful, because it refines the self, but the fact that hikmah is the criterion of truth. When we listen to a verse of the Quran, or we listen to a hadith, or we listen to a statement of a thinker or any individual, if you weigh that statement on the scale of hikmah, you can gauge its truth value. Do we accept the statement of the Prophet or a person because the Prophet said it or because it is true? Well, this is a complex question. Because it has been established that the Prophet is infallible, he's the Prophet of God, and so on, we accept all that he says. But however, since the Prophet isn't here with us today, and there is a gap of 1400 plus years between us and the Prophet, that not everything that has been recorded in the books of Hadith can be attributed to the Prophet. So it is said that this statement is attributed to the Prophet. It is narrated by so-and-so and so-and-so. But the real criteria is not the chain of transmission. This is a secondary criteria. It is not because it is found in Bukhari or Muslim or Al-Kafi or another book of Hadith. The real criteria of the validity of a statement attributed to the Prophet is the hikmah and the truth value of that statement. This is a lost criteria, and it is a very, very important criteria. It is measuring the statement according to the principles of hikmah and the principles of reason. Now, we cannot rationalize all that the Prophet had said, because his reason and his intellect is far beyond the intellect of the common man. He received divine revelation. If we can measure all of the words of the Prophet by our own reason, we wouldn't need him. So it's not the case, I'm not making the argument that all of the prophetic statements must be measured by our own reason. But what I am saying is that there is an inherent hikmah in the statements of the Prophet, and that is what makes it true. Sometimes we can reach that hikmah and sometimes we cannot. So this is why there is a difficulty in assessing which hadith are true and which are not. So scholars have used other methods such as hadith transmission and so on and so forth. As for the Quran, now we know that the Quran is the book of God, it is protected and so on. But even the Quran is true because God has placed hikmah in all of its verses. He says, wal kitabi wal hikmah. And he refers to the Quran as hikmah, as I mentioned in the last video. So the Quran itself is a hikmah. So placing the Quran on the same plane as hikmah should bring the concept of hikmah a great esteem in our own eyes. So that the hikmah in and of itself is equatable to the Quran. Or in other words, that the value of hikmah is like that of the Quran, because the Quran ascribes hikmah to itself. It takes on the attribute of hikmah. Prophet Isa said that hikmah is the light of the heart. So hikmah is nur. It's a nur, it's a light, it's a spiritual thing, a spiritual reality. There are 5 qualities of hikmah that I will mention in the next video, beginning with truthfulness, sublimity, masterfulness, comprehensiveness, and applicability. These are 5 qualities of hikmah, which we will cover in the next video. Stay tuned and thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.